Alright. Hello, thank you for watching. A movie based on a book should match it. But there are some acceptable differences that, if those differences are there, will not cause me to accuse the movie maker of lying to us and committing false advertising. First of all, the character in a movie might not be a perfect match. I'm talking about the way they look. The personality should match. How they say things, that should match. Because that's why the book was so fun to read, because that character had this personality. You're changing too much if the personality is different. But you might not find a perfect match physically, and that's okay, because the book writer has an infinite amount of possibilities on how they could make a character look. Size meant both directions, musculation, strength, agility, eye color, skin color, hair texture, shape of the nose, all those things the author of a book can make like that. They can make any combination they want. Now somebody who's making the movie, no matter how much they want to find a perfect with a person with a perfect match for all these different factors, all these different descriptions, they might not be able to find it because they have to choose from the actors available, assuming we're talking about a live action style of movie. Alright, and one thing that's going to limit the movie maker's options is they need an actor. It doesn't matter if somebody is a perfect match in every way, hair color, size, etc., etc. If that person can't act and is always happy, always sad, or just has no control over their emotions, or at least what you can see of their emotions, and no intelligence to be able to remember lines, then the movie maker might have to pass over a perfect match to the description of the physical description. So they get someone that's got some of the physical description, but the ability to act. Alright, in the Harry Potter book series and movies, I imagine Hagrid being bigger than he ended up in the movie series. But the movie makers did not lie to me and commit false advertising in that aspect, because, well, the book was a little bit vague, so I'm not saying Hagrid was the wrong size, because in the book it says this many centimeters or this many inches. I'm not saying it was crystal clear in the book, but the impression I got from reading the book was a bigger Hagrid that was in the movie. But the movie didn't lie to me, because you got to deal with what you've got. Real people in this world are only so big. And so if you got a choice to make, CGI to get the perfect size, or maybe I'm the one that had the wrong impression about the size. But if I was right, you got to choose CGI to make the perfect size, or just get the biggest person you can find, and we'll call it close enough. Okay, but yes. Okay, well, you're not going to find a perfect match. If the character in the book was a certain age, you should come close to that in the movie. So that's, but this video is the acceptable differences. Alright, so characters might not be a perfect match. Starving characters, okay. It would be immoral to make an actor or actress starve themselves and become unhealthily thin to match a person who is starving to death. So I'm not going to complain. You're not committing false advertising if you don't starve your actresses on the verge of death. Or actors. Alright, so that's an acceptable difference. At the same time, morbid obesity. It's an acceptable difference if the character does not match up perfectly because the character in the book was morbidly obese. One professor that comes in later in the Harry Potter book series, the book described a fatter, an extremely fat man, and the movie did not have an extremely fat man. They did not have an athletic, thin man. So I think the difference, that example of a difference, and I forgot the guy's name already because Harry Potter is not important, but that was an example of an acceptable difference. It would have been immoral to like tell the guy gain 200 pounds before we start making the movie and then die a year later because of obesity health problems. So they found somebody who was a little plump, not as plump as the book, but that was an acceptable difference because it is an acceptable difference if the movie directors and producers do not demand or insist on an actor or actress hurting themselves by either extreme of body size. Alright, another acceptable difference between movies and books is anything that falls under the category if it would be ridiculously expensive for the movie to make it. If the movie's going to go with a $1 budget and not try at all, I guess you could just decide to not go to the movie where the set budget is $0 or $1. But it's possible for a book writer to describe something that is prohibitively expensive to make a movie reflect. It costs a book writer no extra money to describe an enormous city built of pure gold or platinum or other expensive building materials with rows of gold and platinum and diamonds. And, you know, if there's a book that describes something that's extremely expensive like that, it's acceptable if the movie makers decide they can't afford to make a city of pure gold and just use, well, CGI. With CGI, you can do a lot of this stuff now. But it's still an acceptable difference if they don't show me a city of pure gold and the actors are acting on a small sound stage and I'm seeing, 20 feet of gold in that hypothetical scenario where there's gold streets and gold everything. Other examples of things that could be expensive is enormous amounts of something. Hundreds of thousands of destroyed tanks, hundreds of miles of destroyed aircraft, or science fiction alien technology, or alien mechanization for war. So it's an acceptable difference if a book describes enormous amounts of damage. Like the Left Behind book series, I've read most of that. And in that first book, when the rapture happens, there's a lot of destruction that is described. And there's some pretty big cities built as this movie goes along, as the book series goes along. It's an acceptable difference if they make a movie based on that book and they show me one or two pieces of that destruction that took up several pages and it was a lot of destruction. Alright, so now you know. I believe it is an acceptable difference between a movie based on a book and a book if the actors are not a perfect match to all the characters. If they do not, it's an acceptable difference if if we do not have actors and actresses hurt themselves with either extreme weight loss and extreme unhealthy thinness or extreme morbid obesity, to match up perfectly with a character in a book who is starving to death or extremely obese. It's an acceptable difference if matching the book exactly would be ridiculously expensive. Thank you for watching, and you have a good day.